Always say that good teams find a way to win games, and bad teams, well, whatever the White Sox did on Tuesday, I think.
You are Locked On Guardians, your daily podcast on the Cleveland Guardians. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And this is Locked On Guardians. Thank you for tuning in to Tuesday's episode. Before we get into the fun of it all, today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. This is the easiest, most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnLB. Use code all lowercase LockedOnLB for a first deposit match up to $100. I am your host, Justin Latta. And before we get into all that good stuff, talking about the Guardians win on Tuesday night. Team resilience finds a way as usual. Had a little help from the White Sox, but you'll take that right now, especially with the way that White Sox have played the Guardians this year for whatever reason. So we'll get into all that. A really big day for a couple of guys in this roster, for Carrasco, for Gimenez, for Schneemann, for Freeman. Maybe look bad a day after saying that his spot maybe should have been upgraded. We'll see from there. We'll talk about the trade deadline a little bit more and some panic or some, staying steady there. And then the futures games rosters are out. We'll talk about that a little bit. We'll talk about All-Star Weekend coming up. And another way to look at the 1-1 draft argument right now and just kind of continuing to analyze that. We'll get into that. But before we get into today, of course, I am your host, Justin Latta. One more day with me solo. Jeff is back tomorrow with me. So he'll be back. He's back from vacation. He is just fine. If you're wondering, I have been covering Cleveland's minor league system since 2007. You might have known me from other places like Guardians Baseball Insider, where I was the editor. Currently run my own newsletter, Next Year in Cleveland.substack.com. Would love for you to subscribe over there. I'm also a contributor to the News Herald, the Morning Journal, covering the Guardians farm system, and an occasional prospect writer at Prospects Live. And of course, this is Locked On Guardians. If you are an everydayer, we dive into all the goings on of the Guardians every day, from the majors, the minors, and the draft, which we'll talk about today, as always. So you're here to get your daily fix of Cleveland Guardians discussion. You're in the right place. Happy to have you. Shout out to everydayers. I know we got Homebrew Kev, who was tweeting the other day saying he was a new everydayer. We had some good comments yesterday from Mike Fingerbottom. We had some other good comments yesterday from Nicholas Grigg. Appreciate the comments there. David Lane, is always, chiming in. And some good comments from some dude on Twitter stalked me about the organization development, which I'll probably address a little bit too. It was a comment that's worth responding to, I would say. All right, so before we get into more of the games, I'm sure there will be some comments. I'm sure people will find me a little bit from the Twin side of things. So there was a video going around during the Guardians game and during the Twins game about an interview with Royce Lewis saying, about how the Twins are playing. They're playing good and chasing down other teams. And he was saying that, it's good for baseball to have these races going on in terms of division races. And then he said something to the effect of, the Guardians aren't the Yankees of old and they'll have a downfall soon. I don't even know if that was the full context, whatever. It was going around. It was just kind of funny. And then, unfortunately, Royce Lewis got hurt later that night, as unfortunately he gets hurt a lot. He's a good player, but he gets hurt a lot. You may have seen a tweet from the Locked On Guardians tweet. It was from me, but it was just said, well, you see, because after he made those comments, and again, we don't know if they were in context or not. It was a minute clip that was circling the internet, so who knows if the right context was even there. Just poking a little bit of fun at it. And then I quote tweeted about his injury, and I just said, well, you see, because he said something supposedly about the Guardians and they were going to be on their downfall, and then he got hurt, and it just seemed like an interesting situation, an interesting way for things to go. So nobody was rooting for anybody to get hurt. None of that over here. Just poking some fun at someone's comments and just kind of running with it over here. No malicious intent. Wasn't even a bad comment, but whatever. I deleted it because some Guardians fans even said don't do it, and I got rid of it, even though it wasn't that bad. So if you see that, it is what it is. If you're not happy about it, I don't tell you. I'll tell you about the Guardians, though, is team resilience continues to find a way. I keep calling this team resilience because all year long, every time they continue to, if they have a bad streak, I've talked about it before, if they had a streak where they lost 3 in a row or they lost 2 series in a row or series, I think they maybe lost 2 series in a row once, but every time they do that, they come back and they play well. And they need a little bit of help from the White Sox. And so let's not lie about that. They need some help. But unfortunately, the Guardians are a good team. The White Sox aren't. And good teams find a way and bad teams do whatever the heck the White Sox did on Tuesday in that game. So you'll take it. But the thing that's always good to note is how good this bullpen is. You know, Cade Smith, we probably have to talk about a little bit here. Gave up 3 runs on 3 hits. He was hit a little bit hard. There were a couple of, balls that they found some bad ball luck, but that's going to happen. And there are some things maybe he could work on, or again, upgrading this bullpen could help. But there's going to be days like that no matter what. You're not going to be perfect every time out. But it's always good for this team, the way they're playing this year, to win a game when the bullpen isn't rock solid, right? I tweeted from Lockdown Guardians too. I just made a fool for myself on Twitter, which, the more you speak, the more you let people know you're stupid. I even tweeted, I said, well, it was a huge inning for the Guardians to get a run. They scored 3. They took a 6-3 lead, and you're handing the bullpen a 3-run lead. And, Cade Smith gave 3 runs. I know Hunter Gaddis came in and gave up a run that was charged to Smith, obviously. That's going to happen. It is what it is. But I'd like to see this team when their bullpen doesn't put up a 0 every time. They still find a way to win. That's always encouraging, because it feels like more often than not, the bullpen's always saving the rest of the team from a bad start or a game where they can't score some runs. So good to see the offense pick up the bullpen on a night that was off for Cade Smith. Scott Barlow, that came in, absolute nails. Great performance from Scott Barlow. Struck out the side. I know he gave a hit, but he only threw 16 pitches. So he struck out 3 batters and even gave a hit. Manuel Clase only threw 10 pitches. He was nails, even though the first batter was a little bit shaky because he was a little bit rusty. Good to see overall. The other piece of it, Andres Gimenez, man, he has been going through it this year offensively. Had a fantastic April, and he was okay in May. He was hitting 100 WRC plus in May. Wasn't, his best month, but certainly a steady month. The defense for him, though, never slumps. It is incredible. I don't know how many times, I've lost count this year, how many times on a relay throw from the outfield that Andres Gimenez has put a ball right on the money. And I'm talking not even just home plate. He's throwing the ball right into the sliding lane of the player. Like, he is leading. You're doing what you're supposed to do, but it's easier said than done. He's throwing the ball and leading the catcher into the path of the runner, which, because you can't block the plate, otherwise you'll get called for it, you have to throw that ball on the money and let the catcher naturally catch it and be in position to tag the runner. And every time he gets a relay throw, he always puts it on the money. It's right there. It always is into the batter's lane. So the catcher is right there and ready. And his defense is just rock solid, man. It's almost enough for me to say that, I obviously, I want Travis Bazan as the number 1 pick. I would move him to the outfield because I don't know. I mean, Gimenez at shortstop sounds great too, but I don't know if I want to move him from second, man. He is just so darn valuable as a defender. It's so fun to watch. And it came up big in this game because that sac fly from Bo Naylor in the 9th inning would have been a tying run instead of a winning run. And I don't know the White Sox closer is. I think it's Kopech. Bravia was closing, kind of all over the map there. But that would have been the tying run. It would have sent extra innings, or maybe they would have had to walk it off to the next batter. I don't know. But that was a huge, huge play in that game right there, because, that was at the context of the game where they were going to tie it up, and could have gone either way. So good defense there. And Tyler Freeman, the more you talk, and I talk 5 days a week for a half hour, and I sound stupid a lot of it, but I said yesterday that I thought that, center field was a spot Cleveland should look to upgrade if they can. I don't know what's out there. Maybe they won't, but maybe there's an offensive piece out there they can go get in the outfield. And I still do stand by that. I'm not going to back down because of one night, but right on time after a tough slump that Freeman and going through, hits a huge home run. He had 2 hits in this game, and then he had a huge play in center field. I haven't really questioned the defense, to be honest with you, with Freeman. Like, for a guy who is in his first full year of playing the outfield, just out of spring training, that was the only reps he got, he has played a heck of a center field. I'm not even looking at the metrics right now. I'm just going through my head. And the metrics might say he's been average. Maybe he's been, slightly fringe, whatever. I think he's done a great job out there. I've been impressed. The offense has always been kind of streaky. And same with Andres Gimenez offensively. Like, Andres Gimenez had a hustle double. He obviously had the hit where he should have been hit by a pitch. Didn't get the call in the 9th inning. Came back anyway and got it based up the middle for a second hit of the night. That was huge. And then Freeman, I guess, kind of bugging him over with a broken bat grounder or whatever. And the wild pitch got him to third. So, a little help from the White Sox manufacturing, which we'll talk about the White Sox in a second. And then he ended up scoring. So Gimenez and Freeman might always be streaky. I think it might be, just what it is. Oh well. But good for them to have big nights. It was a huge night for them. Daniel Schneemann, too. You got to talk about Daniel Schneemann. A big 2-run homer in the 2-hole. He was 1 for 4 with that home run and 2 strikeouts. There's going to be some swing and miss in that game, but I really like that Stephen Vogt has put him in the 2 spot. I've been saying that I think Jose Ramirez makes a ton of sense here, and I still wouldn't mind seeing that. But they were saying on the broadcast, and I totally agreed with this, that Daniel Schneemann is going to see some pitches to hit in front of Jose Ramirez because Schneemann has great plate discipline. He does not chase. He has really, really I think above league average chase rates. So doesn't come out of the zone. Yes, there's some swing and miss overall in the zone, I think, on the bat path, but he doesn't swing and he doesn't chase out of the zone. So you've got to throw him strikes. I wish you could give some of what he does to John Kenzie Noel, truthfully, but he doesn't chase. So he's going to see good pitches. And if he doesn't, he'll take his walks in front of Jose, which is even better. But then he gets fastballs to hammer in front of Jose. He does what he did. So kudos to Vogt for putting Schneemann in the 2-hole. Kudos to Schneemann for continuing to also prove me wrong about his role and how he's progressed this year and what he's worked on. So all good stories there. We'll talk about Carlos Carrasco a little bit. We'll talk about the trading deadline and not to get too down, not to get too up, really, too. We'll talk a little bit about that. We'll talk about a little bit about the prospect game, the latest mock, and another way to look at the 1-1 debate and then the All-Star game overall. So some good stuff to come on the rest of today's Locked On Guardians. Guys, you already know that this episode is brought to you by Booking.com. Yeah. You know that summer travel is heating up, especially for baseball games. Hey, the All-Star game's coming up. The Futures game is coming up in Texas. Maybe you want to go down and be there for All-Star weekend. I did in 2019 when the game was in Cleveland. That was a great experience. I would love to experience that outside of Cleveland. I'd like to go to it more. All-Star week is one of my favorite things in baseball. And as you know, I also used Booking.com to help book a hotel when I was going out of town to see Jim Thome inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2018 at Cooperstown. And there was nothing available anywhere near inside of Cooperstown. I ended up staying in Utica, but I was able to find that place because of Booking.com. So that was super clutch to have something that was within driving distance, that wasn't crazy. And honestly, it kept me out of the craziness of Cooperstown. The drive back kept me away from the traffic. So super clutch, Booking.com there. Appreciate that. And the right stay can make you a fan of any city, whether it's Cleveland, whether it's Texas, maybe it's Minnesota, maybe it's Cooperstown, even your rival's city. Book today on Booking.com or on the site in the Booking.com app. July 3rd, Guardians fans, that game is sold out for the Guardians as long as the weather holds up for that. But if you are trying to get last-minute tickets, Game Time is the place to do it. They are the authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. And then prices on Game Time will actually go down closer to first pitch. So if you are trying to make plans to go to that July 3rd game, I'm sure July 4th is nearing a sellout as well. If you're trying to make plans to that, use the Game Time app. Maybe you want to wait last minute to see what the weather's going to do today. Use the Game Time app for last-minute killer deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and the lowest price guarantee. You know, one of my favorite things about Game Time is the all-in pricing. I always want to know what I'm paying when I get to the checkout. I don't want to put a $40 ticket in my cart and get to checkout, and all of a sudden it's $80 with no explanation. None of that with Game Time, and I always like to know what my seat looks like before I buy it. Get a panoramic view of your seat before you buy it in the app. So download the Game Time app, create an account, use our code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. But again, create the account and redeem our code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. Also want to remind you to check out the Locked On Sports Today channel on YouTube and the Amazon Fire channel apps. If you're sick of screaming, if you're sick of hosts of shows that don't know your team, check out the Locked On Sports channel on YouTube, streaming 24/7 for opinions and analysis from local hosts that know your team the best, all part of the Locked On Sports Network, where you cover your team every day. All right, real quickly, I want to give Carrasco his flowers, too, before we move on to trade and deadline stuff. This is a good start for Cookie overall. 1 walk, 7 strikeouts. Again, I know the White Sox aren't a great team. It is what it is. But a good start for him overall is really what we want to see right now, especially what the starting pitching is, right? Logan Allen wasn't terrific the other day. It was fine. You're getting Gavin Williams back. We'll see what happens there. The upside's great, but we don't know consistency and rust-wise. Bibee and Lively are your only guys you can really count on. Carlos Carrasco has made himself better in that respect recently. So the last 3 starts, he's really eliminated the walks, if we're being honest overall. He has not walked more than 2 batters since it's been a while since he walked more than 2 batters. We have to go back all the way to April, believe it or not, since he's walked 2 batters. He walked only 2 batters against the Orioles. He only walked 1 against the White Sox tonight. There were no walks against the Blue Jays that last start. Before that, no walks against the Marlins. 1 walk against the Rangers. That was a pretty solid start for him. So Carrasco has really toned down the walks a little bit. There are some days where he's going to get hit. I think that's just the stuff where he's at right now. He doesn't have the explosive fastball. He's got to rely on some other stuff, but things have been okay for him. I mean, the Blue Jays lineup I know hasn't been super great, but they're still dangerous enough to catch you if you're on a bad day. The White Sox lineup, Luis Robert tagged him for a 2-run homer. Good player, is what it is. The Toronto Blue Jays start, the other one, he had 5 runs allowed. That wasn't the best, but again, the lineup is can be better. He only had 2 runs allowed against the Marlins, not a great team, but he's been steady. And unfortunately, I don't want to say unfortunately, that's not the wrong way to look at it, but the Guardians have other needs in the rotation upgrade. McKenzie was an obvious place to start for the time being. I still think he's going to be back. I still think they need him back. But right now, if you can get 6 innings and 3 runs out of Carlos Carrasco every time out, I think you're going to take that. I think that's the best version you can ask for, and anything better than that is definitely, the icing on top of the cake. All right, we had some comments about the trade deadline on YouTube that I thought were actually really good. So obviously, there was a comment, I think it was Mike Fingerbottom, who was talking about reading the tea leaves. There was an article saying that I forget who wrote the article, but they were saying the starting pitching market price is going to be too high, and they already got Williams back, and they signed Boyd. They think that the big starting pitcher trade isn't going to happen. I can't say for sure. Either way, the prices are high. You're not wrong about that. The prices are going to be high. And I know a lot of people have been sitting out there saying, well, no one's a seller. No one's going to have anything to trade. Yeah, starting pitching is going to be hard to come by at the deadline. That's why I keep preaching bullpen as an option. Go out. The relievers are going to be more easy to get to in a trade. And that's why I think a hitter makes a big deal too, because you might not get that big piece of a pitcher you're looking for. But I still think there's a possibility of existing. I'm not down on it. And look, there's going to be a pause during the trade deadline. I think I read this from Ken Rosenthal, or maybe it was Zach Meisel. I know it was on The Athletic, and they were saying that there's expected to be a pause in trade rumors and all this other stuff. And trade rumors are always what other executives think, or never what the team thinks, and especially the Guardians, because they don't let anything out, as we talk about all the time on the show, right? So whatever news is or isn't out there, stay steady. I encourage you to stay steady. That's the mindset I always put through it for this kind of stuff, is that rumors are going to happen. They're not going to happen. It's going to be slow. I think if you're a Guardians fan by now, I think you should go back and look at past news and how things have trickled in during cycles where the Guardians are good. And just remind yourself that news for the Guardians on the trade market generally comes out of nowhere. There's just not a lot, and again, if I don't see it from Jeff Passan or Zach Meisel and Ken Rosenthal, it isn't, I don't believe it yet. Those are the 3 places I'm looking in terms of rumors, in terms of anything that might happen. But let's also wait until we get, right to the trade deadline. The extra wild card spots have muddied the waters for years in terms of the trade market. And you've got all these teams that are hanging around the 500 mark. I mean, look, the Mets are over 500 for the first time since like April. They've been hot right now. The Astros have zoomed to 3.5 of the West. The Blue Jays are fighting for their lives. They're all the way back. But like the Cubs are struggling right now. There's some, smoke about them being sellers. I don't really know who they have. I haven't checked into them in terms of if there's a fit for Cleveland. My point is, though, I think I brought this up before. Teams are going to be advantageous. I think most teams are like the Guardians and the Rays, not in terms of, how they build their teams, but how they approach trades. I think this is more because of how GMs are brought along in terms of who they're studying under, who they're learning from, their educational background, which is a whole other conversation. But they're opportunistic and they want to take advantage. So even if you have a situation where a team like the Blue Jays, right? They have guys like Shapiro and almost said Anthony Ross Atkins are fighting for their jobs, as we've brought up multiple times on the show. They're probably not going to trade. I don't expect them to trade Vlad or Bichette. I really don't. I think those are going to try to run it back, but they're on the hot seat. So the more they trade, the more they're kind of pushing themselves out the door. And I'm sure they're aware of that. Maybe I'm way off, but my point is they'll trade rental. So I think they're an option. But you do have teams that are hanging around the middle, right? The Rangers won the World Series last year. They have pieces coming back, they hope. So they just got Max Scherzer back. I think he got hurt the other day again, though. So we'll see. Nobody come after me for saying that. I wasn't making fun of his injury. Jeez. But like the Pirates are in the middle. The Reds are in the middle. The Diamondbacks were in the World Series a year ago. They're, floating around 500. Like, look how hot the Mets have been. They're quote unquote back in the race now because they're over 500. They got really hot. Any of these teams could do that over the rest of the month, and their GM could say, well, we're going to hold, or we're going to add. And that creates obviously more chaos and confusion. That's why teams right now are having these preliminary talks. They're saying, what's your mindset? What's your approach at the deadline? A lot of teams are saying, well, we're wait and see mode. I think Ross Atkins even said the conversations they're getting are more about their process and where they're at. And, he's got reason to say whatever, to posture and fight for his job and all that stuff. But let's wait and see until what happens the week before July 30th on the deadline. Because teams that fall out late, like we think the Angels might sell, but they're goofy. But the Giants, the Diamondbacks, the Reds, the Cubs, the Mets, the Blue Jays, the Rays, all of those teams, if they hit a bump in the road right before then, and they're 5, they're 6 out, and maybe someone gets injured, I'm not making fun of any injuries again, they might look to sell. They're opportunistic. Those GMs might say, this probably isn't our year. Let's stick with our long-term pieces, but we'll sell some rentals. Maybe we'll capitalize the way the Guardians capitalized there in Savalia a year ago. So just wait and see to hang on until the market develops. The market has not even come close to developing yet. So I still think there's a lot of news to come there. That's the approach I'm taking this year to the deadline, just because A, you don't get a lot of Guardians smoke because that's just how they operate, and B, everything's kind of muddled right now. So let's wait and see, especially with the draft coming up. Teams are so focused on the draft. Speaking of the draft, we got a mock to talk about. I got a different way of the 1-1 pick I want to throw out to you guys about just how to look at it in terms of the rumors and what the Guardians might do and the approach they might take. I don't know if I love the approach, but this is maybe another way to take it in and see how you feel about it. And we'll talk about the futures game really quick too as we get out of here on a Tuesday, a winning Tuesday episode of Locked On Guardians. You guys already know what it is with Prize Picks. They are America's #1 daily fantasy sports app. Over 5 million users. And right now, you can win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks to turn $10 into $1,000. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and you can watch the winnings roll in. I said on Monday's episode, hey, Daniel Schneemann, there's an option. He had a home run. You took a batter score there on him. Maybe he ended up bringing home something fun out of that. A lot of ways to win. So we're looking at Wednesday's matchup for the Guardians. Gavin Williams is coming back for the Guardians. You've got Eric Fetty for the White Sox. Fetty has been a good pitcher this year, and the White Sox have played the Guardians tough. So when you're looking at pitcher strikeouts, I might take, I don't know, Fetty's not really a strikeout artist, so I'd be careful on that one. The White Sox strike out a lot. So Gavin Williams, if you're looking at pitcher strikeouts, you might want to do more on pitcher strikeouts there. Hitter fantasy score. If you think Tyler Freeman is starting to come out of it, if you think Andres Gimenez is starting to come out of it, that's a good way to go too. There's always walks, there's hitter fantasy scores, total bases. There's all different kind of stats you can pick more or less on, and it's just you versus the numbers. It's not you versus any algorithms, not you versus anybody else. It's just you having fun. So if this sounds good to you, download the Prize Picks app today and use our code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. That is code LOCKEDONMLB on Prize Picks for a deposit match up to a total of $100. Pick more, pick less with Prize Picks. It is that easy. Make sure you are catching the action on Wednesday on your SiriusXM app if you cannot be at the ball game. If you want to hear Tom Hamilton call a game and Jim Rosenhaus in front of a sold-out crowd at Progressive Field, just search Guardians on the XM app. All right. And also, I want to address real quickly before we get into 1-1 stuff and the mock, all that stuff. I also wanted to address the comment from, believe it was the Twitter stalker guy. Great YouTube handle. Some dude stalked me on Twitter with a bunch of numbers about how the Guardians need to build as an organization internally and not necessarily trades. And I made the comment back to him. I said, do you remember Jarrett Wright and Bartolo Colon? Because there was talk about how they could have traded them for Pedro Martinez. You know, and the comment was, well, Noel might hit, Tana might hit, Freeman might hit. All those guys might hit. I don't disagree with that at all. Those guys might hit. Rocchio might hit. Fry might heat back up. All that stuff. I don't agree. I don't disagree with any of that. They might. But what you have right now is a team that is, I don't want to say defying odds, but they are performing above maybe what most expected. I don't know what they expected internally. I think they expected to be better than they were a year ago, and they obviously are. But they are definitely outperforming a lot of expectations. And they're performing in a way that you believe this team can do something in October because you have a Daniel Schneemann and a Tyler Freeman who can be heroes on any given night. You have Jose Ramirez. You have Steven Kwan, who is super close to qualifying for the batting title again. Bo Naylor's starting to look better. That sack fly would have been a strikeout a month ago. So, you know, you have different guys on this offense that are able to step up. I think there's another bat out there that can complement them. And they have to add starting pitching. Doesn't matter what you do. They have to add a starting pitcher some way, somehow. Like I said time and time again, this bullpen is playoff caliber. Look no further than what the Diamondbacks did a year ago. Look at the Cleveland team of the Indians, whatever, of 2016. Nobody thought that team, after losing Danny Salazar and Carlos Carrasco, were going to go far in the playoffs. Andrew Miller made that possible. Cody Allen made that possible. Corey Kluber made that possible. A really, really balanced and steady offense made that possible. This is the kind of team they have this year. They are a balanced offense. They have a great bullpen. That does wonders in the postseason. It's a time to capitalize on it. Trust me, I was irate when they traded Clinton Frazier. I thought it was going to be not a terrible move for Miller, but I thought it was going to be terrible that Clinton Frazier was going to go on to have multiple playoff or all-star appearances with the Yankees. Justice Sheffield and him both, they're not even playing in the majors anymore. And the two relievers are hanging around from that trade. Francisco Mejia was supposed to hit. Didn't work out. Brad Hand was what they needed at the time, okay? All those things worked out. Prospects might work out, but I think if you look around the league about who's traded the deadline, prospects, they might be something good in the future, but if you can win right now, and no one's saying trade every prospect, trade Noel, trade Manzardo, trade DeLauder, trade everybody. No one's saying that. Pick a couple middle infielders. You got 90 of them. Pick a couple. All it takes is one team to believe in them, and you can make a trade. Add a starting pitcher, add an outfielder, boom, done. Or add a reliever, add an outfielder, boom, done. We're not changing the whole makeup of the team. Trust me. Clubhouses like when you add at the trade deadline. It invigorates them. It shows you believe in them. It gives them reinforcements to believe, hey, we can go out and do this thing. And plus, you never know what might happen. You want to add before the end of the deadline because, God forbid somebody get injured and you didn't make a move at the deadline. There's no waiver trades anymore, and you're stuck with whatever you have. You couldn't make the upgrade. Again, not rooting for anybody to get injured. All right, the Futures game was announced. We had Ralphie Velasquez and Jason Churio in the game. Not a surprise there. That was awesome. Good for them. I'm excited for All-Star Weekend. The latest mock. So I talked to you a little bit yesterday about Baseball America had J.J. Weatherholt 1 and Slade Caldwell 36, which is an interesting scenario because, again, for months I didn't believe that Slade Caldwell could get to 36. And I don't know if this seems like it's not a consensus, but a belief that more people are having now that this could happen, which is great. Here's the way I kind of debated this with Jeff off the air and some other friends about the draft. So let's say, for instance, the Guardians have Travis Bazan number 1 on their board. Maybe it's Charlie Condon, whatever, one of those two. And let's say J.J. Weatherholt is their 4th guy on their board. Maybe they have somebody else at 3. Let's just say that, though. Maybe it's Connor Griffin. I don't know. But let's say they have Slade Caldwell as number 20, for example. This is just, hypotheticals. Let's say Slade Caldwell is number 20 on their board. So the Guardians, let's say they pick Travis Bazana. Well, they're no longer comfortable or they don't want to offer the money to Slade Caldwell to say, hey, we'll pick you at this number at 36 with this bonus figure. And then his agent will shop around that number and say, hey, are you willing to match this? If not, don't take my client. And he gets the 36, and boom, the Guardians are paying him that. If you take Bazana or Condon at 1, whatever it is, maybe that doesn't happen. So maybe instead of Caldwell, who's your number 20 player on the board, you're settled. I don't want to say settle, but you're pivoting to plan B as the number 32 guy on your board gets the 36 instead of number 20. So you kind of look at it as, hey, we could take our number 1 overall option, and then we'll take our number 30 overall option, whatever it is, at 36. Or the other way of looking at this is JJ Weatherholt. Maybe he's second or third or fourth on their board. They're taking a guy that's not number 1 on their board, because the guy on everyone's board that's number 1 may not go number 1 overall. You're saying, well, we could get our number 4 on our board and our number 20 on our board in the first 2 picks, or you could get number 1 on our board and number 30 on their board. What do you value more? Do you value getting the top guy on your board more, or do you value getting number 4 on your board but also getting number 20? So you're kind of getting a guy that's higher on one end and a guy that's still pretty high on the other end. So it all comes down to what that value is, and of course, it all has to do with money. Look, the Guardians are going to spend the draft money regardless. You don't have to worry about that. The money is going to be spent. They have $18 million to spend. It's going to get spent. It's just a matter of how they decide to do it. When Jeff comes back, I know we're going to have a more nuanced debate about 1-1 and JJ Weatherholt and Travis Bazana. It's going to include data. It's going to include just past examples and research of this strategy. All good stuff we're going to get into when Jeff comes back. Also want to point out the All-Star format change. Let me know in the comments how you think about this. Some people don't love how the NBA does this. I do. The NBA does their All-Star draft right now, and it's no longer East versus West. NL and AL play each other, every day. Interleague play's been here for over 20 years now, 30 years, whatever it is. And now that you have a balanced schedule, you play everybody every year. There's no more mystique about AL versus NL. It's gone. I want to see Aaron Judge and Bryce Harper as the captains. I want to see Aaron Judge either pick Juan Soto, or maybe he picks Gunnar Henderson. Maybe Bryce Harper picks Alec Baum, who looks like he's going to the All-Star game for the Phillies. Maybe he picks Jose Ramirez. I want to see the All-Star draft. Let me know what you think. I think it's time for Major League Baseball to switch it up. I would really love that. Hopefully we got some other good stuff coming for you ahead. We're hoping for a special interview next week, and we have some plans for the draft as well that we want to firm up, but we want to tell you about. So just saying, there's a lot of exciting things ahead. Again, Jeff is back tomorrow. Super excited to have him back. I appreciate you guys riding with me for this last week or so. Solo, we had John Fanton. He was fantastic. I appreciate you guys sticking with me, though. You guys have been tuning in at a great rate and enjoying this roller coaster ride. I know they've had a little bit of a skid, but they won on Tuesday. We're feeling good about that win. Let's get a win Wednesday in Gavin Williams' first game back. Let's keep the offense rolling. Jeff will be back. We'll have more drafts to talk about. Hopefully we'll have a Guardians win and a Gavin Williams well-pitched game to talk about as well. We will talk to you on Thursday. Thank you all for listening. Thank you all for tuning in. Leave us an iTunes review or an Apple Podcast review, whatever it's called these days. We'd appreciate it. Appreciate all you. Go Guardians, go. Keep beating the White Sox.